It is so much fun to get to sing about the joy of our salvation. It's something that we get to do together very often at church. We come in here and we sing songs, and so often the kind of songs we sing are exaltations to God for having done something so wonderful as to send his son Jesus to save us from our sins, and then just the elation that we get to experience from having been forgiven, for having the hope of heaven through eternity in our future. We get to sing words like, mercy there was great, and grace was free, like we just did. And I love getting to sing those songs together with you. There are times in my life where the attitude of my heart is just eager and ready to express joy over my salvation, where those songs really hit the note for me about how I'm feeling and what I want to express to God. But there have also been times where they didn't. Where those songs that are so triumphant and happy and so joyful just didn't feel like something that I should be singing at the moment. Personally, I can think of a couple reasons why this has been true in my life, where I didn't feel like singing those songs and being really happy. There have been times when I was dealing with tragedy or just hardship in my life, the time where I had failed at work or failed at school, and where I just felt like I was too down to be that excited and happy and to just lift my heart to God and worship. But then there are also times where I felt out of place at worship, not because things are going wrong in my life, but because I knew that I was struggling with sin. And when you carry that with you to church, and you stand here with everybody else, and you see the words on the screen, there can be a little incongruence there. Sometimes it can be a little uncomfortable. It has been for me many times in my life to carry my sin into church, knowing what I'm struggling with, knowing what I haven't repented of, knowing that week I hadn't spoken to God. And then to sing those songs, sometimes it doesn't feel right. Maybe I'm the only one. But even though they didn't feel right, what do? You stand up, you sing the words on the screen to be like everybody else, and to be a part of our team worshiping God that Sunday. That's good. I don't think you should stop singing, even if you don't feel like it. I think you should go ahead and say those words. But there are many times where I knew that something needed to get set right before I could really say them, before I could really sing about those things. I would say that this latter reason, where I'm carrying sin into my worship with God, happens way more often than when I'm experiencing tragedy or hardship that makes me too sad to worship. It is way more common for me to bring that to a Sunday morning where I know I'm struggling in my relationship with God because of sin, either because of something wrong that I know I'm doing, or because of the way that I know that I've neglected God in my time, throughout my days of the week leading up to worship. So I want to talk about that sensation today. And maybe this morning you feel great in God's presence. Maybe this morning you are able to sing on Calvary and it just hits the right note and everything lines up perfect. And if that's you this morning, then you can take the rest of this time off. So like if you want to doodle in your bulletin or maybe like grammar check my slides, that's okay, all right? But if you're like me and you know when you're singing praise to God, when you're standing in his presence here this morning, you know there's some things you need to work out with him, then that's who I'm talking to today. That's what we want to talk about here as we look to God's word. We're going to be in Isaiah 22 this morning. And Before we're done here this morning, I want you to know that I'm going to ask you to stop avoiding that confrontation today, here in this room. Before we dismiss today, I'm going to ask you to talk to God about what stands in between Him and you in worship. And to talk to Him about why you don't feel comfortable in His presence. To talk to Him about what you're struggling with that is bringing you down or that is putting enmity between you and Him. Today, I'm going to give you that opportunity. I just want you to know that as we approach that moment so that you can examine your heart and see what's in there so that we can talk about it together. We're going to be looking in Isaiah 22 this morning. And this passage comes in a section of Isaiah where Isaiah is giving pronouncements against the nations. And he starts out with all of Israel's neighbors. And he tells them all the calamity that's going to come to them. Isaiah, this portion of Isaiah, is written in the context of the coming Assyrian invasion. And so when we read these pronouncements against the nations, God is talking to a world in this context where Assyria is about to overrun all of the Levant, all of Mesopotamia, all of the Levant around next to the Mediterranean Sea. And so we run into God telling these people what's going to happen, even talking to Assyria about their fate after they complete this incredible feat, even talking to Babylon, as we discussed last week, about what was going to happen after they conquered Assyria. But we get to the end of this pronouncements against the nations, and that's when we see that God isn't just going to talk to His people's neighbors. God's people are going to work their way into this list, and they're not going to fare much better than Cush or Edom. Also, before we start this passage, you need to know about what happens when Assyria does invade. Assyria invades, they come down from the north, they wipe out Israel, the northern 10 tribes of the nation of Israel. They overtake them, they take their leaders and a whole bunch of their population, they take them into exile, they never return. Okay? This Assyrian army comes and invades all the towns of Judah too. So that's the southern 2 tribes of Israel. They invade all the towns and they get to the gates of Jerusalem. King Hezekiah is king during this time, during the invasion. King Hezekiah knows it's coming, and he is making preparations to defend Jerusalem from the invading Assyrian army. They fortify their walls, and Hezekiah does something crucially important. Hezekiah diverts water from outside the city walls of Jerusalem through an underground tunnel into the city walls so that Jerusalem will have water during a siege and the sieging army will not have it. Okay, so this is what is happening as they're getting ready for the Assyrian invasion. The Assyrians are going to come and they're going to knock on Jerusalem's door. They're literally going to stand at the city gates. They will be turned away, but still it's going to be a pretty dramatic experience for the people of Judah. So let's open now to Isaiah 22. Start reading there in verse 1. Here we have a prophecy against the valley of vision. This is a funny way of indicating Jerusalem, because Jerusalem is built not on a valley, but on a hill, on Mount Zion. Okay? The valley of vision here is a little bit of a sarcastic jab at Jerusalem, because they're not a valley, they're on a hill. And he's talking about the valley of vision, probably referring to the valley of Hinnom, which is south of Jerusalem, where they would often practice idolatrous worship. And so he's going to say that he's talking to the valley of vision when he's talking to the people of Jerusalem, making fun of the fact that they have not seen what is coming with the Assyrian invasion. So a prophecy against the valley of vision. What troubles you now that you have all gone up on the roofs? You town so full of commotion, you city of tumult and revelry. Your slain were not killed by the sword, nor did they die in battle. All your leaders have fled together. They have been captured without using the bow. All you who were caught were taken prisoner together and have fled while the enemy was still far away. Okay, it's talking about destruction that's coming to Jerusalem. And it's saying that even though there's going to be no bloodshed, you're going to suffer a great defeat. Look at Isaiah's posture towards this news in verse 4. Therefore I said, turn away from me. Let me weep bitterly. Do not try to console me over the destruction of my people. He's sad. He sees that the destruction is coming for Judah. All of a sudden, Judah gets included in this pronouncement of judgment against the nations, and he wants to weep. He wants to not be consoled. But as we read on, I want you to pay attention to who brings this calamity on God's people. Who is the one that is going to be in charge of sending this army to do this thing? Picking up in verse 5. The Lord Almighty, has a day of tumult and trampling and terror in the valley of vision. A day of battering down walls and of crying out to the mountains. Elam takes up the quiver with her charioteers and horses. Kir uncovers the shield. Your choicest valleys are full of chariots, and horsemen are posted at the city gates. It is the Lord Almighty. Pay attention to that introduction for God. That's going to be repeating throughout our passage today. It will repeat 4 times. We won't get to the 4th one, but we'll see it 3 times. The Lord Almighty. It is God who has brought this day upon his people. It is God who has seen to the fact that the Assyrian army would come and lay siege to his people in Jerusalem to destroy the fortified cities of Judah, to cause fear in the hearts of the people in Jerusalem. Let's keep reading in verse 8. The Lord stripped away the defenses of Judah, and you looked in that day to the weapons in the palace of the forest. Okay? The palace of the forest was a house built by Solomon, and it was an armory, essentially. So pay attention to where God's people are looking. He says, the Lord stripped away the defenses of Judah. Man, there's a missing E there. So if you did check out and start to grammatically check my slides, there's a strike right there. The Lord stripped away the defenses of Judah, and you looked in that day to the weapons in the palace of the forest. So he's saying you looked to your own resources. That theme's going to continue as we read on verse 9. You saw that the walls of the city of David were broken through in many places. You stored up water in the lower pool. You counted the buildings in Jerusalem and tore down houses to strengthen the wall. You built a reservoir between the 2 walls for water of the old pool. Okay, it's talking about all the preparations that the people of Jerusalem made to prepare for this Assyrian invasion. All the ways that they were busy getting ready, all the ways that they were busy preparing themselves to defend the city against this attack. But they missed something crucially important. Verse 11. But you did not look to the one who made it, or have regard for the one who planned it long ago. This is the complaint God brings against his people, that they were suffering his discipline because of his wrath. Again, remember, it is the Lord who sent the Assyrian army to his people because he is displeased with them. They are on God's bad side for their wickedness, for their idolatrous worship, and for the wicked way in which they treat each other. And God has again and again sent them punishment after punishment, and now here's the big one. He's going to send the Assyrian army. He has ordained a day of tumult. Sorry, put my page here. And trampling and terror. Verse 12. The Lord Almighty, there it is again, called you on that day to weep and to wail, to tear out your hair and to put on sackcloth. But see, there is joy and revelry, slaughtering of cattle and killing of sheep, eating of meat and drinking of wine. Let us eat and drink, you say, for tomorrow we die. you see the problem? You see the problem? God has sent them this day of reckoning so that they will wake up to their sin. And they see it coming. They see their judgment approaching. They see the armies of Assyria standing at their gates. And they're busy getting ready for it. They're busy shoring up the walls. They're busy making sure they have water in the right place to outlast a siege. But they don't look to the one who made it. They don't have regard to the one who planned this day long ago. They're not turning their attention to God. They're not understanding that this problem that they're suffering, this pain that is at hand for them, this event that they're living through is God's tool to wake them up and get them out of their sin. They're not sparing that a moment's attention. Instead, they get ready for this event, and then you see that they're kind of carefree about it. Come what may sort of attitude. But see, there is joy and revelry, slaughtering of cattle and killing of sheep, eating of meat and drinking of wine. Let us eat and drink, you say, for tomorrow we die. It's a passage that comes up again in 1 Corinthians 15. But you see that these people were not chastened by what they suffered. These people didn't take a moment to consider that they may be receiving the punishment of God, that they needed to repent. Instead, they did what they could on their own to try to make their situation a little bit better, and they ignored God, and they kept on living for their pleasure. This is a warning to God's people. It should be a warning to you and I. When we get on God's bad side, more importantly, or maybe more specifically, when we're suffering pain, when we endure hardships, we need to consider whether or not we have displeased God. We need to take the opportunities that we have in life to wake up from our sin by taking the hardship and the pain that we experience and turning our attention to God. To do what Jerusalem did not. And when we're on God's bad side, when we suffer pain, when you have that experience in worship where you know that there is something between you and God, that there are probably some pretty good reasons why you shouldn't be singing the words that are on the screen. You need to humble yourself before God and pay a little attention to Him. Not to go on living with joy and revelry like the people of Jerusalem. Look what happens to them because of this sin. Look at God's judgment upon them for the way that they treated Him when He sent the Assyrian army to their door. In verse 14. The Lord Almighty has revealed this in my hearing. Till your dying day, this sin will not be atoned for, says the Lord Almighty. God sent them a wake-up call. God wanted them to see that He needed them to turn around. God sent them an affliction, and not the first one. This is the last one. God had been trying to get their attention for a long time, and they had been ignoring Him. They've been living life on their own. They've been living their life on their own with joy and revelry even. And God says, for this, till your dying day, this sin will not be atoned for. The people of Jerusalem would survive the Assyrian invasion. Hezekiah would give over a great amount of treasure to the Assyrian army, and God would afflict the Assyrian army with a terrible disease, and a whole bunch of them would die, and they would turn around and leave. But the people of Jerusalem still suffered under God's hand. They remained on God's bad side. After Hezekiah comes comes one of the most wicked kings in the history of Judah. They turn away from God. They continue to worship idolatrous gods, and God punishes them soon. They will be invaded by the empire of Babylon. Their walls will be destroyed, the temple will be brought down to the ground, and they will be carried off into exile. God had been trying to get their attention. God had been trying to speak to them, and they needed to see in their pain and in their suffering that they should repent and give it to God their hearts. But they ignored it. So what will you do with your pain? What will you do with the sensation that you have? That you have some things you need to work out with God. If you're like the people of Jerusalem, then you will acknowledge that it's there and keep on living like you are. If you're like the people of Jerusalem, you will, from time to time, maybe realize that this is the case, but go on living in revelry, like the people of Jerusalem did. But my invitation to you today is to do what Jerusalem did not. My invitation to you is to have that confrontation with God. Let him see what you've been holding back from him. Let him deal with the sin that you've been holding on to. Address him about the fact that you and he haven't spoken in a while. Be willing to confront this issue that stands between you and your God, because he's trying to get your attention. He wants you to give his heart to him. He wants you to experience his blessing and his joy and to not be on his bad side. He wants you to make that acknowledgement. Will you do today what Jerusalem would not? I want to show you a passage from James chapter 4. We read there in James 4, starting in verse 8, "Come near to God, and he will come near to you. Wash your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. Grieve, mourn, and wail. Change your laughter to mourning and your joy to gloom. Humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will lift you up." The bad news is that if you continue in this sin, if you continue in this discomfort in God's presence, if you continue in your life with something between you and God and just eventually accept that that's the way it's going to be and you never deal with it, then the same pronouncement that was given to Jerusalem will be given to you. Till your dying day, this sin will not be atoned for. That's the bad news. But the good news is that through God's Son, Jesus Christ, you have the opportunity to this moment, this morning, from this room, be set free from that thing that's standing between you and God. To be set free from the burden that has put you on God's bad side, whether it be a sin that you carry around knowing that you've been doing something wrong, or whether it just be the fact that you have not paid any attention to God. You can be set free from that moment. You can be set free from that sensation that you have in worship that you don't belong, or that you shouldn't be saying the words that you're singing. We can be restored because of what Jesus Christ did on the cross. And we don't need to wait. We don't need to work for it. It's not going to take any time to develop or build. It is one prayer away. This is what it takes. What James 4 says. If you will come near to God, he will come near to you. That's what Jerusalem wouldn't do. That's what we must do. And as we do that today, as I give you this opportunity to talk to God about what stands between you and him, to have this moment where you can address what you've been holding on to with him, where you can talk about what he's been trying to get your attention for, I want to point out a way that you can do it going forward more regularly. We at Madison Church have a time built in to every service that is a perfect occasion for you to examine yourself before God and speak to him. And this comes every Sunday when we take communion. Jesus said for us to take communion. It's a practice he instituted at the Last Supper in the upper room in remembrance of him. And we have that time in our service every week, and then we also have a time of meditation. This time where music is playing while the trays are being passed, where you are invited to examine your heart before God, to remember what he did on the cross, and to speak to him. And there's a passage in 1 Corinthians 11 that talks about this moment. It's talking about the Lord's Supper, and it says, everyone ought to examine themselves before they eat of the bread and drink from the cup. Every Sunday is a chance for you to examine your relationship with God. When you take the emblems and when you remember Christ's body and his blood, it's a chance for you to examine what stands between you and God, for a chance for you to examine whether or not you've been living a life of faithfulness that week or that month or that year. It's a chance for you to confess your sins and repent so that you can be restored to God's good side. So we're going to come to this time in our service today where we're going to take communion, and I want you guys to use this time. I want us all to use this time to talk to God, to repent of the sins that make you uncomfortable in his presence, to turn away from what's going on in your life that's putting you on God's bad side. I want you to be honest with God and confront what is separating you from him. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, you know the sin in my heart. You know the burden that I carry. God, you know each heart in this room. You know what we brought here to worship you today. You know what we're struggling with. You know what we have forgotten to do, what we have forsaken. So, dear God, as we come to you in prayer today, as we have this time of remembering your Son Jesus, of his body broken and his blood shed on the cross, dear God, hear our prayers of confession and repentance. God, show us the way of hope and blessing that comes when we rid ourselves of sin and when we walk faithfully with you. God, forgive us for the times when we haven't, and restore us today, in this moment, in this room, to your blessing. With our sins and our unfaithfulness left behind. Pray these things in your name.